what's happened? Well, Brokey was benched from FaZe, and some would say a long time coming. But it is kind of weird. Just for context, he was the number 8th player in the world in 2025. 2024. And by May 2025, he's gone. He's out. So it is a shocking roster move, even if you might not think of it in those terms. But anyway, effective today, Chicken Brokey, has been benched from the starting roster. He remains with FaZe as we explore our options moving forward. And so just, again, because I like to provide a bit of context, it is probably a long time coming in a way. He's been out of form. He's been off his food for a while. And I just want to show you, it's not that he doesn't have good series. It's not that he's still not capable of having good games. He often does. But the big problem that has been with Brokey in the Elige iteration of FaZe, as you'll see, is he has way too many stinker series now. And I mean stinkers, You wouldn't see these numbers. Like, this is a really bad run, This is below the Hooksy line, all the 0.6s. 0.48 there against Virtus Pro. 0.59 there against Astralis. 0.62 here against Falcons, followed by another 0.45. This, quite famously, was where he was pretty much individually blamed for costing FaZe the series. And then he has a tendency to step it up against opposition that realistically FaZe should be beating. He stepped it up against Complexity, he steps it up against 3D Max, steps it up against Gamer Legion, steps it up against the mighty FlyQuest. But then when Mouse come to town, it's back to 0.50. Now, Brokey's always been that kind of cat. Like, Brokey's just been that guy that, ever since he joined FaZe, so when he was recruited into FaZe, he wasn't even an AWPer initially. He was a rifler that then picked up the AWP. And as a result, people were very forgiving of some of the mistakes he would make as an AWPer. And then he went on to be a guy that posted, monster numbers, actually. Like, this guy would very often be, if FaZe won an event, he would very often be in the MVP contention. You'll have seen a graphic doing the rounds on Reddit and Twitter right now about the three Musketeers, which was Twists, Rops, and Brokey. And he was like the guy with the highest average rating over that period of time they played together, apparently. So, that doesn't surprise me. He always made mistakes. He was always, for me, the player that makes the most mistakes out of any Tier 1 AWPer, like really questionable repeats, really questionable decisions, really questionable reads on where people could be rotating from on the map. But more often than not, he either had the reflexes or the skills to bail himself out, or he would just post big numbers anyway despite those mistakes. Now, I've said on previous podcasts, I want to say probably even going back as far as the Revenge of By the Numbers, its brief run before I quit the show. Pretty sure I was saying then that Brokey was always going to be a bottleneck of sorts for FaZe, because while he has the capability to be a top 10 player in the world based on the numbers, is he going to mess up and make mistakes in games where you only realistically get one or two mistakes to make? Since we've moved to MR12, by the way, the concept of the game-losing mistake is something I'd really like more people to try and get data on, because I think it's way more important now than it ever has been. Ultimately, in the games where, we're talking the top 10 teams are playing each other, there is a limited number of errors that you can get away with in a game like that, or your opponents will capitalize and end up winning the game. And in MR12, you have fewer rounds to play with. So, obviously, it makes sense that players that post good numbers but are prone to really brain fart-esque silly mistakes, those players are actually more risky to hold on to in the CS2 era. And there's certainly a number of them. There's certainly a lot of players in Tier 1 CS that make these errors in every game that you watch, like just momentary lapses in concentration for whatever reason. And it's something I'd like people to talk about more. Brokey, for me, was always the archetype of that type of player. That's who he ended up being. And so, yes, if he takes a hit to form, then it's really, really bad. Now, there's a kind of sidebar story we can kind of talk about. Sponge was on Snake and Banter. Chad's back in the podcast space, and the world is better for it. And Chad is giving opinions. And, he said on that episode of Snake and Banter, he said, Elige has killed FaZe. I want everybody to imagine the FaZe they know and love, the FaZe in grand finals, with the epic and scrappy 3v3s, the momentum calls. That FaZe is dead, and it will unfortunately be attested to Elige, because he's the man who joined the team and replaced Rops. And then he said he's not playing bad overall. It's that we've seen them try to recalibrate the roster all season, even though Elige isn't performing badly. And I want to be clear, he's not playing badly. The way the team functions with him doesn't work. And I think it's a long road back to the FaZe people were excited to watch. And I wonder how many roster changes it would take to get them there. But by doing that, you lose the identity of what they were anyway. And so a lot of people, in reacting to this comment from Chad, were kind of like, oh, I'm glad somebody's finally saying it. Now, let's go over it all. When Rops left FaZe, Rops obviously had a monster run in the playoffs at the Shanghai Major that powered FaZe to the finals. Then basically they lost the final, not because of Donk, as the narrative goes. They lost because of Magic's having a life series basically out of nowhere. It was the best I've ever seen Magic's play, probably. And that ultimately was the difference maker in something that felt destined to happen. But Spirit got their major. They followed that up with a blast. And then ultimately, they haven't done much of anything else in 2025. Then we all said when Rops left, we said, first of all, Vitality, you're getting a very good player. And if FaZe don't have big money to spend, and Elige is looking to leave Complexity, that's just a natural move that you would make. But in many ways, how it's panned out is it wasn't a very natural move to make. For starters, FaZe have lost Nuke as a surefire map that they could pick. It was always a great map for them. It's now not a great map. They essentially gave Elige outside and took Rain away from that position, where I'd say he was one of the better players in the world in that role. And it's just never been the same since. And you add a shaky Brokey into that, well, it's done. It's like now FaZe don't even have a solid, reliable map pool. And they gave up so much for Elige to fit him into the team, as is Karrigan's way in all Karrigan lineups. And I just don't think it's worked. They were running Elige as a pure entry fragger on T-sides, and, he was being very effective in that role. But ultimately, that style might not be what FaZe do, and this is what Chad's alluding to. There was a slow, reactive FaZe that worked when Rops was playing well, that they can't be anymore because they don't have a player like Rops on the books. And so everybody had to be on their A game in the Elige era. Now, I'll also add, I said during that Shanghai Major, if you want a hot take, I don't think FaZe will win a trophy in 2025. And everyone was like, what? And I'm like, I just don't think they will. I just think there's something that happens when Elige joins a team that ultimately makes it harder. You're getting a fantastic player, one of the best NA's ever produced, if not the best, but there just seems to be something that then there will always be this like chain of events. We get Elige, but what now? And so FaZe were a bit of a paper tiger anyway, without Rops, I think, and it was obviously going to be tough for them to win in a CS2 era that's so far been dominated Vitality, with the Falcons that have now emerged as genuine contenders, with Mouse that were, for the first quarter of the year, the second best team in the world. It was always going to be hard for them to get about it. And unfortunately, I've always suspected that Elige's perfectionism is both a help and a hindrance to the teams he's in. I made a point on a previous stream talking about the move where he was already talking about, hey, I want to fix our communications. I want to start calling a little bit on CT, and I'm just like, dude, you are working with the greatest IGL the game has ever produced. Just please just shut up and dribble. You know what I mean? Now is the time to just play. And I just don't think he has that in him. I think he needs to be active and involved. And if you don't vibe with somebody that has to be that active and involved, I think it can get hard for you on a team, particularly if you're struggling individually. And this is all speculation on my part. I haven't talked to anyone in FaZe. You know, I like Elige. It always pains me to like say these things, but you know, this is the nature of punditry. And it doesn't help as well. It doesn't help you beat the allegations that as soon as he left Complexity, all of a sudden Complexity are looking good. That doesn't help either. So a lot going on. And I wonder if it's had this knock-on effect that Brokey wasn't able to pull him out of this slump. But maybe not. Maybe it was just time for Brokey to have a slump. Not all players last forever. And so Brokey cut from the roster, reasonably so. And of course, there's been people have opinions about this and people are reacting about this. I'll show you, of course, the important ones, which are his teammates themselves. So this was Carrigan. He said, it was the roughest benching of my career. Something had to be done, and I want to really highlight this is not a blame on Brokey. The lineup didn't work, and I used all my experience, but with this, we throw a Hail Mary at the major. More on the Hail Mary in a moment. Long term, we have no idea yet what's going to happen. Now, I've been saying pretty much since last year, this FaZe lineup has been on borrowed time for so fucking long. Like, it's actually crazy. We're still talking about this lineup. First of all, they are on an island. They are just their own thing within FaZe. I don't think FaZe management has anything to do with them. I don't think a lot of funds are allocated to them beyond their salaries and maybe any bonuses they've negotiated. It seems to be a mostly Carrigan-run project when it comes to recruitment. It doesn't look like they have any aspirations to spend big and bring in star players and genuinely contend for trophies. What they're content to do is to have this lineup, and this lineup will go to events and it'll, you know, get top 6, and sometimes it might win one. Sometimes, increasingly less and less is that the case. But Carrigan's the guy running the show. And, you know, Carrigan is 35. It's going to happen soon, guys. The tearful retirement looms. It might not be this year, but it's probably next year if it's not this year. And what's going to happen after the major if this spectacularly collapses? Not to mention, we've got Rain. Rain announced today he's having his, I believe, his second child with his wife. You know, life just moves on for everybody. And it's obviously like best will in the world. You know, Rain's like 30 now. Well, how much more do you want to do in the game? How much more can you do in the game? How many more times can you still have that hunger to dust yourself off, get back on the horse and fucking try and ride for glory again? I think he expended a lot of energy, both emotionally and physically, like quite literally. I think it took a lot out of him, the Shanghai major. Remember, he traveled back and forth because he had to attend a family funeral. He had the emotional labor of dealing with that grief, which he bottled up. He went all the way to the final and then lost in heartbreaking fashion after what looked to be like an epic comeback had been secured. And then the emotional dam broke. And, you know, people, being the internet, they took pictures of it. Look, I'm making memes. Me, when I is sad, I am very funny. Because that's the community we operate in. But after that, yeah, how much more can you want to do? Right? How much more does he have to do? Like, nothing, really. He's pretty much done it all. He could have had, by now, probably as many rings as Glaive. You know, just didn't work out that way. I don't know. I think probably, like, if this isn't the last year, I'll be very surprised. I mean, but I said that last year as well. Anyway, speaking of Rain, and congratulations to Rain as well on the new edition. That's going to be coming round about the time of Dallas, which is why he may not be in attendance. But he said this nice thing for Brokey. He said, goodbye for now, my friend. Watching you grow up from the little kid from FPL to the man and player you are today has been nothing short of amazing. Wish you the best of luck in whatever the future holds for you, buddy. And there is a picture of Rain holding Brokey in the Giga Chad's massive arms and shoulders, because it was Rain that was the real Giga Chad the whole time. Do be careful though, Rain, because you've used an HLTV photo there, So Nomad will probably be sending you an email threatening you with legal action, so just be careful. Anyway, so this seems to be amicable. Something had to happen. They had to make a change. The community were calling out for change. FaZe fans were calling out for change. I think Brokey had used up a lot of goodwill because FaZe fans do expect to win. But unfortunately, they just haven't been even getting close in the Elige era, which is how it'll have to be known, because that was the roster move. I'm not attributing it all to Elige by any stretch of the imagination. And so, it has come to pass. Another chance. Boom. The CS GOAT is back, and he's on our side now. Joining us for IEM Dallas and the Austin Major, please welcome s1mple. And so s1mple, who has been just in limbo, is not only back on a team, but back on a team that realistically should just about, even in with the top 10 that we have now, have championship aspirations. And so s1mple has been on loan to Falcons. We saw him in Shanghai. It didn't go very well. I'll show you a tweet from s1mple about that, or rather an interview. But just right out the gate, you know, you have to say, right, we needed to pick up somebody that could fit into what Brokey does. We want somebody that's capable of rifling as well as AWPing. We didn't just want a pure AWPer. That's not how FaZe run things. And we need somebody that can be explosive and add firepower and hopefully be consistent. So just on its face, you have to say, if they were getting 2023 s1mple, that would be a good thing. But we just don't know which version of s1mple exists now. And I don't think s1mple knows either. s1mple has not been playing a lot of CS2. He's been easing back into it. And honestly, I'm going to write an article about this, like an opinion piece. But I think there was probably a period in there where, whether he would want to admit it or not, and I say this as someone with genuine love for him and genuine concern and someone who genuinely wants him to be great again, I think there was probably a period in there he might have been in crisis a little bit. There was like stuff happening on stream where he would be off camera and he was drunk and, you know, he's raging at people in the game, but not in a fun, playful way, in a drunk, big, mad kind of way. I think he played well below his level for Falcons and looked very frustrated and was so frustrated at things over there. Apparently, it was his decision not to extend the loan. I'm seeing videos of him popping up and he's trying to rap like he's Boomich and it's like, brother, you know what you're good at? You're good at playing Counter-Strike. You're good at playing Counter-Strike and breaking the game in ways that no other player can do. And so I just hope that he's got enough good people around him, because I'm also seeing he's got this fucking entourage, like a lot of sports celebrities and sports icons and wealthy influencers get. I just hope he's got enough people around him to help get his mind right for the task at hand. Because this is a poison chalice gig, if ever there was one. Like, this is not a functional phase he is slotting into. This is already a dysfunctional team. He is replacing somebody. He's also, and nobody's mentioned this, I think maybe Thorin did, he's working with Elige again. Now, everybody knows from that time that while Elige and s1mple had a lot of respect for each other, they didn't fucking get along in that Team Liquid lineup. Hiko was very often like a peacemaker, you know, in Liquid. They have very different ideas about play style. They're very egotistical, rightly so, because they're incredible players. So, look, that was a long, long fucking time ago. That's like another lifetime. I'm not saying s1mple's even the same person he was back then. Obviously, you get more mature as you get older. That's the theory anyway. But what you'll find with a lot of professional players is their idiosyncrasies stay with them because it's part of what makes them intrinsically great. If you've ever done any sports coaching, you'll know what I'm talking about. You'll see players that have suspicions and habits that last them their entire career, and you can't iron them out because they're convinced if you do, it'll break them. They won't be as good anymore, like Samson having his haircut. I just hope that that's like a long time gone. But it is something worth thinking about, because we know, even from the tail end of Falcons, there's still a little bit of old s1mple in there, right? Like, he's still going to rage and get frustrated and tell people they ain't doing what they're supposed to be doing. We saw it in the play like s1mple debacle. I mean, this is another thing as well. This is another reason why I have to question where his head's at, because, you know, he did the play. Like, by the way, again, I'm not saying this from a place of animus. I'm saying it from a place of genuine concern. I think he had people around him that were using his image and using his brand to do what was ostensibly a rug pull that he was going to get the blame for. There was all these, like, forces and figures involved in the Play Like s1mple project, none of them transparently about it, all of them using his name. It would have been him who had to record the content, him who had to do the sessions. He was partnered with ESL and Face It in a way that they never explained. I think he had family members involved, so I don't know about that either. And I think ultimately he might have got played a little bit there. So there's lots that he has had happen to him, not to mention the situation in Ukraine, which obviously is going to take a toll on him. Particularly someone who he never liked spending, you know, if you know the guy, he never liked spending lots of time away from Ukraine, away from his family. He's a very family-oriented person. He's one of the reasons why he turned down big money to go live in America. He could have done that, but he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to be away from people he cares about. And then, since the situation in Ukraine, he's been on the road a lot. You could see he put on a little bit of weight. You do when you're on the road. You don't eat right. You can't cook your own food and count calories as effectively. So he's gone through a lot, man. The wear and tear between 23 and now has been a lot for him. And, you know, I'm hoping, you know, he said he was getting back in the gym and getting healthy and he's ready to play and he's going to prove everybody wrong. I hope he's right, because this will be such a high-profile stage on which to fail. And if FaZe don't do well and s1mple plays poorly, that will now be, he's been loaned out 3 times while he's been on the bench of Na'Vi, and it hasn't really worked out any time. So there was an interview that he put out. You can see here, this is where he was talking to the streamer Roman Makrivsky, and it was shortly after the announcement was made public. And he was asked, you know, are you ready to go? And he said, yeah, I'm in shape. I'm very happy, guys. My watch was recently stolen. And I'm just thinking that when life takes something, it gives you something back. Which, by the way, that's a very Zen-like, karmic way to think about the world. Yes, I agree. I think the energy you put out, it boomerangs back at you. So make it positive, you know what I mean? But yeah, life takes something, it gives you something back. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to play. I won't fuck up like I did last major. This time, I'll do even more. The practice starts on Wednesday. I like my teammates. Some might say the team is old, but I always wanted to play with Carrigan and Rain, especially with the latter. I played with Elige, and he's strong. I only didn't play with Frozen. And then Makrivsky said, please don't kick Rain if you stay on FaZe. And s1mple said, are you mad? Rain, he was the first one who messaged me. I won't let anyone touch him. Now, I also do want to point out to all the dickheads, you know who you are, that were saying, kick Rain and put JKS in the team, that smile, that damn smile, all the fucking JK sexuals. Every single pro rates Rain as a teammate. I'm just saying. And also, if you're a FaZe fan and you think Rain's got to go, you are stark raving mad. And honestly, I think Rain's smile is as good as JKS's smile. There, I said it. I said the brave, controversial thing. But anyway, I like my teammates, and some might say this team is old, but I always wanted to play with Carrigan and Rain, especially with the latter. And I've played with Elige, and he did, and he's strong. That's what he said. He didn't say he didn't say I like him. He said he's strong, but that's fine. You know, don't have to be buddies. This is the thing. You know, vibes are overrated. Bit of friction, bit of spice, like Neo and Taz back in the good old days. That's what you need. So, good start, saying the right things. And then he said, how would you like it to go? And he said, I would love to beat Vitality in a quarterfinal, even if I lose afterwards, just to show them that it's not that easy. And if we beat Na'Vi, that would be absolutely, just imagine what kind of storyline can happen. It can be absolute cinema, but we must at least make it out of the group. So that's what he set himself. But he's still talking big, which I like. Again, he might not be fully aware of the level of the task ahead, but fair enough. Now, it's been stipulated that it's just a loan for those two events. That's what they've decided on. FaZe have announced they have signed s1mple on a loan deal until the end of the Austin Major. So what that does is it does give them Dallas as a warm-up. And if you take a look at IEM Dallas, which is going to be the event after Astana, which starts in like 5 days or whatever, it's going to be a pretty good warm-up, it's got to be said. If you look at the teams that are going to be in attendance, you can see now there's going to be a lot of good opposition there. And it's going to be obviously in America. It's going to be roughly the same kind of environment that you're going to be up against. So it's a very, very, very good opportunity to get some serious reps in. It's the perfect warm-up for the major, 100%. And we're going to get a very good idea about the level that s1mple is at as a player just coming out the gate raw, having not played a lot. And I do want to say, if I was a betting man, which of course I'm not, but if I was, are we ever going to see 2021 s1mple again? I'm going to say no. But with the caveat that 2021 s1mple was the peak of Counter-Strike I think I've seen in any version of Counter-Strike. Saw Get Right and Forest and Markelov and fucking, I've seen it all going all the way back, all through Source, all through CSGO. 21 s1mple was insane. Like, I'd never seen a player win so many games by himself. And everybody says, like, 2018, you can have the 21 for me, personally. And, he got the major in Stockholm, and it was great. And, it was legacy cemented. And then, obviously, things started to come unstuck, but it was also a deeply weird time, wasn't it? We'd just come out of the pandemic. Things was, blah, blah. So 21 s1mple for me is off the table. But he doesn't have to be 21 s1mple. He just has to be 24 Brokey. He just has to be as good as 2024 Brokey. And if he's as good as 2024 Brokey, that's going to be good enough for FaZe to get back into having deep runs in tournaments. And I'll tell you, even s1mple, that's been out of contention, out of practice, it won't take him long to get back to being, as good as Brokey, right? I definitely think he can get to that level again. I mean, we saw flashes of it when he was on loan at Falcons. And remember, he had 2 loan spells. You did see flashes of it. Not often, but when it was there, like this against 3D Max in a losing map, 27-16, 23-17 against Virtus Pro. This is when Falcons couldn't buy a win. The series were tough. This is when they lost a Gamer Legion in Shanghai, and he had a monster last map. He did everything he could, and these are flashpoints from a player that, look at the gap. This is October 23 was his last game for Na'Vi. Then the first loan was March 24, where famously they lost to Metisport, so it was one series. And then they loaned him again for Shanghai in October. So ultimately, that was like a year hiatus. And after a year hiatus, in a game he doesn't like, in a game that he hasn't played, with a gun that he didn't make his name with, he's putting up these numbers against decent teams. Not the best teams, and he had some stinkers, but he did okay. Most people just couldn't deal with that level of, handicap. So, can he be as good or better than 2024 Brokey? Sure. I just think people are expecting Old Simple to turn up, and Old Simple was a phenom in 21. Like, it might go on to be the case that Ziwu is the greatest CSGO, CS2 player of all time, right? It might go on to that. That's just true based on trophies, longevity, consistency, number of majors won. But 2021 s1mple is just a level no other players got close to for me. So we'll see. But I'm going to back him to be better than people think he's going to be. It's just, if you were expecting crazy s1mple to turn up, that can't happen. Like, just realistically. Also, my old buddy Jason made a point, which is the one I'm talking about. I long ago accepted, I don't think we're ever going to get s1mple as one of the best players in the world again, but he's not doing himself any favours by standing in for teams with massive issues and a recent history of underperformance. And what Jason means by that, at least I would assume, is ultimately there has to be something after this. Like, s1mple, maybe FaZe want to keep him, and maybe they've got the money to do so, and maybe FaZe is going to go to the next major. Maybe it all works out. Maybe they make it to the playoffs. I think that would be an achievement, all things considered. And so, okay, they want to do that deal. But if it doesn't work out, what is the next deal? s1mple goes back to bench warming for Na'Vi. How long is left on his contract? How much is the buyout? Who would want to buy him? 2 loan spells at Falcons that didn't look very good. Falcons didn't do anything. s1mple wasn't able to carry them like he used to carry old Na'Vi lineups. And he wasn't able to carry this FaZe lineup. So where would he go next? Falcons don't need him anymore. That whole Messi and Ronaldo fantasy is irrelevant now they've got Munacy. And they're about to sign Kiyosuke, if you believe everything you've heard. And just cut Tezes, even though Tezes is playing lights out. What possible team would be after FaZe for s1mple? Where would s1mple even want to go? I just don't know. So I definitely think it's important this works. And s1mple has to surrender himself a little bit to being at the whims of Carrigan. I hope it's true. I hope he does respect him and want to play with him and is going to listen to him. Because if he doesn't, then it's going to be tough. But fingers crossed. They also did another interesting move. They rounded out their lineup by announcing Skulls would be their substitute for Dallas. And the reason for that is the aforementioned personal reasons for Rain, i.e. he might be on the brink of having another kid. I think that's an interesting one because the likelihood is, according to Rain's Twitter, Skulls might play. And then the warm-up event for the major, the warm-up event with s1mple is essentially a bust because you're not really using the team. And you're going to have to do some temporary work with a stand-in potentially at the event when you're also using a lone player that's meant to be fixing a long-term roster problem. I'll tell you, Carrigan... he's got his fucking work cut out for him at these 2 tournaments. And I'll obviously, Carrigan's, as an IGL, he's got the best record of any IGL for winning tournaments with stand-ins in the game. So he knows how to use them. But this is a fucking lot of pressure to be putting on yourself as an IGL ahead of a major. So yeah, it was a big one. Kind of crazy. Overall, to kind of give some final thoughts. I don't know where Brokey would end up next, but I think there will be opportunities for him once he's had a little bit of time off and just a time to like reset mentally. It's not beyond the realm of possibility he could end up back on the FaZe roster if the s1mple deal doesn't work out, if they don't want to keep him after the loan. It might just be something they're trying to fix in the short term to see if it works, to see if it is indeed a Brokey issue. But ultimately, there's teams I could see him going to. I think he'd have a lot of options. Maybe not a lot. Maybe that's overselling it. but I could definitely see him, joining a decent-ish team. I think he's definitely earned that opportunity because he has been very good for most of his career on FaZe. Idiosyncrasies and all, the numbers don't lie. Won a lot of trophies, so fair enough. For s1mple, I mean, it just depends. There are many levels of s1mple, many different s1mples, you might say. And as I said, 2018, 2021, those s1mples are off the table. Shit, I mean, 2016 s1mple would do. That would be amazing. That would really give FaZe a fighting chance. I just don't know if there's ever been a version of s1mple that's capable of winning trophies since CS2 has been released. And so I'm very intrigued. When I get back from Astana, I'll be watching Dallas with a lot of interest to see how he does, even in what might be a patchwork phase. But it's a big opportunity for him. This is 2 tournaments, 2 LAN tournaments against the very best teams in the world. FaZe will end up playing one of those teams, just by the nature of how these tournaments work. And if s1mple wins a series against a top-ranked team single-handedly while acting as a stand-in for FaZe, everyone's going to swear he's back. He's back to his best. The king has returned. And there's going to be so much hype about them. But if Dallas looks bad, then there's going to be a big cloud over them going into Austin. So, long story short, I definitely fuck with the move. I'm glad s1mple's getting another chance. I really hope he's able to seize it and his mind is right and he's able to make the most of this. I want Carrigan to show everyone why he is the best IGL, both in and out of the server. But it's a gamble. It is a huge, huge gamble. And you know what they say about gambling. More often than not, you lose.